I wanted to talk a little bit about The Source, which is the company that you created for actors, artists, people who want to get better at expressing in general. And several years ago when we first met, I had said to you, would you be willing to work with me on becoming a better actress? And you said, yeah, we'll talk about it. And then several years later, you started working with me and a bunch of other people to develop a curriculum specifically for actors. And I've been talking to different people about it, and like different actors and things like that, enrolling them in the idea of coming and participating and seeing what you've created, because it's been incredible for me. And a lot of the questions that they ask is like, well, how is it different than Meisner? How is it different than Stella Adler or whatever? And a lot of what the answers that I've given have been like, well, it's a partnership with that, because it gives you the foundation underneath all of the technical skills and all of the kind of traditional approaches to acting that we've had throughout time. Like, it really gets to the core of the actor so that you can work on the raw material, and then everything else that they produce is affected by that. But I don't know, like, I'm curious to know what your perception is of the curriculum that you created and where it came from. And
Well, it comes from a mix of human behavior and philosophy, and also really technical communication. Acting is all about a type of communication and being not only more aware, but more congruent in your communication. So you want people to, if you will, and I'm going to be a bit common in what I say, you want people to buy your character.
right.
And the way they buy it is they find it congruent and authentic. Now the question is, if someone could be totally congruent in a character and express authentically through that character, so they could do any sort of a scene or whatever, certainly that actor could do anything. So the question is, how do you achieve that? How do you achieve congruence? How do you achieve authenticity? And I think there are many roads to do this. The thing that I think makes The Source a bit unique is I come from a non-acting background. You could say, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Which is,
So that's good and bad. The good aspect is it comes from a behaviorist, humanist sort of practical and philosophical background, dealing with communication, dealing with all sorts of things relating to the psychodynamics of people and humans, without being tainted by the current pedagogy of acting. And there's both a good and a bad. The good is when you have something that comes in like that fresh, it provides a tool that goes outside of the box of all the normal tool sets. Any actor that wants to create a methodology of acting, especially if they know there's other methodologies, they're influenced in a certain way. And that can be very, very good. But at times, it's also good to have something that is not influenced in the normal way by that, as if coming from another planet. So to some degree, The Source is not just created for actors, it's created for human communication. It's something that can be used in arbitration, it's something that can be used in negotiations, it's something that can be used in parenting, it's something that could be used in a love relationship. And it comes from that perspective, but does have a strong application to what you would call that authentic, congruent expression. And it's not tainted by the other schools that are all extraordinary. It's not at all that they're not great. It's that this is different. So one of the things you can say about The Source, truly, because the way it was created had not much to do with acting, had to do with the human psychodynamic, has to do with a whole psychodynamic model of not only human behavior, but human moral, ethical action. So understanding that, understanding the way that functions within the body, within the emotions, within the thoughts, and how thoughts interrelate with all of those things, and emotions interrelate, how they all are together as a system, is a body of knowledge that was grown specifically apart from the major schools, not only of acting, but of psychology and philosophy. And it's unique. And in its uniqueness is its power. And that's one of the, I think, an important thing about it.
Yeah, you said once it gets you to the source of your genius and the source of your insecurity. It sort of allows you to kind of get in there with the root of both those things. How is the source of your genius the same as the source of your insecurity?
Well, it's, if you knew everything and could do everything, then you'd be a very predictable machine. You know, creativity, one could say, is possibly a direct reflection of that which we cannot quantify, not only about other people, but even about ourselves. And to some degree, you either have to accept that as a unit, it's an article of faith, or really understand that there is a certain insecurity to it.
Interesting. So it's like looking at insecurity in terms of unpredictability as opposed to like the self-loathing way that I look at insecurity.
Well, what do you think of as insecurity?
Well, I think of insecurity as in like the root of like stage fright, or like the reason why I feel nervous.
What's the root of stage fright?
It's like a fear of rejection, a fear of.
Well, tell me more about that.
I mean, that was one of my questions, because I said, like, after 30 years of acting, I still get so nervous sometimes when I'm about to do something that I can't.
They say that about I believe the best actors and athletes and ethicists or whatever it is have a strong degree of weight and insecurity going into something. You know, they say Barbra Streisand has extreme stage fright. I think George Soros, the investor, said if he thinks he understands an investment completely and doesn't see a way that it would fail, he feels very insecure indeed. He has to see the uncertainty to feel good about it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I definitely find that insecurity keeps me sharp, like keeping a room a little cold. It's like it keeps you awake. But there's a difference between that kind of insecurity that drives focus and then the kind of insecurity that paralyzes expression.
Well, I think you're confusing insecurity with the effects of insecurity. Like, do you know what I'm going to say right now?
No.
You're insecure about that. Yeah. Is that scary for you?
No.
Why not?
Because I trust that what you're going to say is going to be good and
in the end, you're going to be okay.
I'll be fine, yeah.
When we have insecurities, and this relates to vulnerability, where we think we may not be okay, then it becomes scary. See, it's not the insecurity that's the problem, it's the fear of the insecurity. And not even fear as in an excited fear, like a roller coaster fear. It's fear as in a terrorized fear.
Yeah.
And you can, of course, recognize that excitement isn't really fear in the same way, and that when we talk about fear as in a fight or flight fear, it's a certain type of a thing. But it's not the insecurity. Insecurity doesn't bother you. Insecurity, is wonderful. If you could predict everything, it'd be pretty dull, and then we'd be robots again.
Yeah, and like what you were saying about unpredictability versus predictability and creativity, like you need a sense of insecurity, non-predictability.
So you're going to go out on stage and you're scared you're going to be rejected.
Yeah.
What's the worst that's going to happen? Really the worst?
I think in that moment, like I was thinking about that as we were talking, it feels like I'll be unloved forever and for the rest of my life.
But let's talk about the mechanics of it. Let's get into it.
Okay.
You go out on stage. You make your entrance. You're not Shakespearean. You've been in Shakespeare recently, yes?
Yes.
So you make your entrance. And suddenly there's silence.
Yeah.
You know why there's silence?
Because I'm so bad.
You're not either so bad or you're just totally blank.
Yes.
You go out on the stage and everyone's expecting, and even the audience knows the line's supposed to come.
Yeah.
They can all say it, but you just don't know where you are. Maybe you mutter something totally incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Okay, now what is going to happen? Oh, you do have some critics in the front row. They start writing.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen?
I think in that moment, I just feel so worth nothing.
Wait, it's going a little further now. I hear some boos coming from the audience.
God,
and some guffaws and some people clearing their throats.
That's the worst.
Yeah. No, and
it just feels so, it's like such rejection, like so.
What do you mean reject? You're not.
Like they've no.
They're not rejecting you.
Right.
They're rejecting your performance.
That's where I get confused.
Yeah. You are confusing you,
right,
yourself,
right,
with what you do.
Right. Completely.
If that's removed, that doesn't mean you don't have a type of, what I might say, sharpening excitement for the challenge. But you come in touch with a part of you that is invincible, authentic, congruent, and unique. And that is indestructible.
Right.
Everyone starts throwing things. They put a spotlight on you, and then people start making fun, and then they're yelling, Allison Mack sucks, and they do all this stuff, and finally someone comes out just with a hook and just pulls you off the stage. And the next day, the picture in the front of the New York Times, full thing is you on stage going with a hook, pulling you off the stage. And they say, biggest flop ever. Do not ever listen to Allison Mack again. She's a bad actress, a bad person, terrible, terrible, terrible. And then just your name and the words terrible, terrible, terrible written. And then not only that, they take it and they put it all over, and not only on all the street corners, but in everywhere where you go, they plaster that picture up so everyone sees.
Yeah.
And they have people following you, holding that picture over your head, and they point to her like bad Allison, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It feels awful.
Yeah, it's okay, but are you alive?
Yeah.
Are you fine?
Yeah.
All right, and the alarm rings and you wake up and it was all a bad dream, and are you still all intact?
Yeah.
So ultimately, it doesn't bother you,
right,
the self.
Right.
It bothers your evaluation of yourself through your performance.
Right.
But there's a part of you, if you believe in a soul or creativity or whatever, that's transcendent of your performance.
Right.
And that's the very part that allows you to change your performance.
Mm-hmm.
If you were hooked to the laws of physics without having any sort of a separation, then your performance would determine your performance, which would determine your performance, which would determine your performance. And just like a snowball rolling downhill, you really wouldn't be able to change the course of events. But the beauty of our possible delusion that we have free will is that we can change the course of our events.
Which is so much what the Source looks at and focus on. I mean, at least the foundational curriculum.
It also, I hope, brings you to a point where you have that wonderful sense of invincible summer, the Camus quote, in the depth of winter I finally found in me there was invincible summer. To find your invincible summer, to find that not only the core, that invincible summer, but then what arises from that core is every moment that you've lived in your life has crafted an experience of you and your life and how you've been in itself. And that is unique. And you can bring that uniqueness authentically to anything. And you can explore all the different facets of yourself and use yourself as the best tool you can. So the Source is designed from a behavior perspective to allow you to expand yourself, because people don't realize there's so many parts of themselves that they lock away in a dungeon. And they're very clever at avoiding it. But that part of themselves exists and they don't want to examine it.
Right.
And as long as they don't examine it, they're missing certain colors off their palette that they could be painting with. To accept the broad aspects of yourself, to accept all of these things that are you, both good and bad, successes and failures, all of these things, these performances that came as a result from you. You've been performing your whole life. Mm-hmm. To deny certain aspects of your performance, to underemphasize certain things and overemphasize other things, makes it so that you don't have the whole self that you bring to whatever communication you're doing, whether you're communicating something through acting, or communicating something through your children, or communicating something to your partners, or whatever it may be, even communicating to yourself. And in so doing, for example, if a person has access to more of themselves to bring to any behavior or any action, their sculpting will be better, their baseball will be better, their acting will be better, their participation in community events will be better, fuller, more authentic. You know what's worse than a person that isn't authentic? A person that is authentically not whole, because there's a whole part of them that is blind to being authentic. If you have the person that's inauthentic, that sort of presupposes, it's a trick question, but sort of presupposes that there is an authenticity.
Right.
But when you've taken part of yourself and distorted it or locked it away, it's impossible to be authentic, because your representation of yourself to yourself is inauthentic. So you become authentically inauthentic, but worse, you become authentically incomplete. And although incompletion is an important thing to be able to reveal, you have to see it. You have to know. Otherwise, you mistake completion for incompletion.
So you have to see it. You have to see the parts of you that you've shaved off. Is that what you're saying? You have to
Yeah,
know
at
that
least in the least see that there is a wall there.
Right.
And at best, be able to re-welcome those parts into your repertoire. And in so doing, you know what it is like to have a wall there, and can authentically represent what it's like to have a wall there, even if you no longer have that wall there.
I'm just thinking about what you're saying.
Yes.
I just was thinking, my thought, it led me to thinking about different artists, that some of the greatest expressors, musicians, artists, painters, dancers, actors of our time have led themselves to very tragic ends. Like Robin Williams is the most recent one that comes to my mind, or Jeff Buckley, the musician, or,
Keith Emerson.
these beautiful people who it seems like there's like a combination of like the confusion of themselves and the things that they experience in themselves. And then this, I don't know, just like great sadness or torture or something that is pervasive.
Sadness. I think that which is the seed of suicide is when the essence of life no longer becomes as exquisite, as miraculous as that which you perceive through that life. Being grateful for being alive, experiencing the miracle of being alive, is a thing that few people actually work to foster,
Right.
to have a depth of that. And that can be, and that is, with the Source, or with programs like Reverence, a deep practice. And the more you practice, the deeper it becomes and the better you get at it. And that becomes a cornerstone to everything that you do in life. But people perceive things in life that are very painful. And pain is considered bad. But it's not the pain that's bad, it's the suffering that's bad.
Right.
Pain is actually a very important thing. And if we look at something like love, and most people say, oh, they desire love, or in the end, they either act from love or hate, or our desire as humans is to be loved or to experience love. Love has been, unfortunately, the concept has been tarnished. Love is something that in the most developed human sense, the sperm and the egg. An egg does not have love. A sperm does not have love. Embryo in the womb does not have love. A newborn baby does not have love. But an old, wise person has an exquisitely developed sense of love, potentially. Somewhere in between being born and being old and wise, love happens. Some people think love happens at puberty because they start getting all sorts of tingly feelings, and now things feel alive. They feel like you want to consume in them, and they call that love. The nature of love, or what I might call the most developed aspect of human love, is not about just happiness, is not about feeling good. You know, and I had said the other day, I came up with a sort of a concept that love disfigures happiness. People who are seekers of happiness are actually going the opposite direction of love. And why do I say this? It's not that love doesn't contain moments of happiness or moments of joy, but the way we have a weight to our love or understand love itself or the magnitude of love is through pain. When we most feel love, we feel pain. And the depth of pain that we feel measures that love. And the depth of pain that we feel in the sacrifices that we make for love. If we look at love as some sort of transcendent human emotion, you have the body, and when you're a newborn, you don't have a whole lot of complicated emotions, but you have this body, and this body desires to eat, desires warmth, this sort of a thing. And you start to develop emotions, and you have fight or flight sort of a things. And then as you get a little older, you start to have more variety of emotions, more different types of feelings. And feelings often are just that. There's certain types of visceral, somatic things that we call an emotion, and we have ideas attached to them. And we find, as we become more intellectually able, we find that those ideas inspire what we call emotions, and those emotions inspire ideas. So we can walk down the street and have had an experience, as I have, with a rattlesnake, stepping on a rattlesnake, almost getting bitten, walking down the street one summer day, stepping and hearing the rattlesnake at my feet. And it's just a twig. But because of my unique experience, I go into fight or flight. I think I better run away from that rattlesnake. So it's this very interesting, complex interrelationship between this ideas, abstractions, principles, emotions that are emotions of meaning, emotions that are much more viscerally caused, and the body itself. But we say love is beyond all that. And when we say that someone loves someone, even when they speak of love in the Bible, love is beyond all those things. How do you know someone loves someone? Is it at the good times? No, it's through the hardest times. It's when there's the most sacrifice, when someone maybe is even willing to sacrifice their life for the love of their partner. And we then see. And when we see that in a movie or a play or in real life, and we let ourselves go there, we feel this deep pathos. We feel this sense of love. And love comes not from the receiving. It comes from the giving. It comes not from the satiation or the comfort. It comes from the sacrifice and the pain. That's how we know it. That isn't to say it doesn't exist in joy and in happiness, but we know it through our pain. And if you have a fear of pain, you have a fear of knowing your own love. It's not pain that is the problem, it's the suffering that's the problem. So all of these things that we are scared of in our personality, that we hold away because we're scared of the pain they might bring, is a way we also limit our capacity to experience our love. So what the Source ideally can do, I hope, is by broadening the person's experience of themselves and giving them, if you will, reuniting them with these fragments. And this is only part of it, but this is one of the bases that they work off of. It also increases their capacity to experience love and to grow love within their life. So.
And you mentioned reverence, which is the curriculum that you developed that is sort of, we call it like the emotional gym. Mm-hmm. And I find them to be very inseparable, the source and reverence. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, like, okay, so that the source opens up this kind of cavern of experience that you've shoved away for a long time, but it's like if you open the door to this thing and you don't know what to do with it or how to interface with it, or you don't have the strength to withstand the experience that comes back with that, then you have all this information about yourself, but you're kind of back where Robin Williams and Jeff Buckley are, like lost in the emotion of that experience.
Whereas in the source, it's hard for a person to be deeply authentic if they're inauthentic with themselves. And people who are inauthentic with themselves, the nature of being inauthentic with yourself is that you're blind to it. Otherwise, you'd be authentic with yourself and then you'd be sort of conning yourself on top of it.
Right.
But true self-inauthenticity is blindness. It's an incompletion. But with understanding this philosophically and opening these areas up, then what are the practices? What are the actual practical tools that allow you to, if you will, it's almost custom design. You might call it designer emotional states, designer emotional capacity, designer emotional transitions.
Yeah.
Not only how do you design them, but how do you practice them?
Right.
See, how do you become good at being angry? There's some people that are very good at being angry, and they practice it daily.
Right.
And the more they practice, the better they get.
Right.
But imagine if you could have a precise understanding of emotions and the dimensions of all those emotions, and to be able to practice them and to practice the different aspects of them and practice even the experience that leads to love.
It's just incredible, because I think when we first met and I first started studying the work that you produce, and just became a student of all the different exercises that you've developed and processes to build myself, I felt like I was in university for my soul. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, I've always loved education, but I've never really had a lot of formalized education. I think we kind of share in that. But this felt like education in terms of like nothing intellectually firm. It was more like I was educating like my inner light or my spirit or whatever. I don't know what to call it.
I think, well, in a way, you mentioned we share in that. No, I think you were better than I was. I had a lot of formal education. I just didn't. I abused it. I didn't. No, I did complete it. I just didn't respect it the way maybe I could have. In some ways, I got some things from it that were very good, and in some ways, I think I didn't get things I could have gotten from it. So it's more I had the opportunity and the structure, whereas you didn't have that same structure.
That's true.
So you're better than I was at
I
that by
don't
far.
know about that.
Wiser.